Hello, everyone, and welcome to our channel. We are Techies. My name is Sumit, and this is part 4 of the React.js interview series. And if you've not watched the previous three parts of the React.js interview series, I would suggest you to watch them. Let's have a quick recap of what we have covered in the previous three parts. So this week I was taking an interview. The candidate has just started his career. He had around 3-4 months of experience. So I started with a very beginner level question like, what is React.js and why do we prefer React.js over other frameworks? Candidate replied correctly that React.js is a JavaScript UI library and it supports single page applications. So I cross questioned him like, what is a single page application? Um, and to my surprise, the candidate was not able to answer that. Then I decided to cover this topic as well in my videos. So this single page applications concept is not something that is done only by React. It is in fact supported by other JavaScript frameworks like Angular and Vue.js. So what happened in traditional JavaScript and HTML application was that whenever we navigated from one page to another page, the content of the new page were derived or fetched from a server API call. Okay, so this was a network call, and whenever there's a network call, there is a loading time and there's some latency involved, which is not a very pleasant user experience, right? Now in single page applications, there's only one single page and there are some static components like the header, the footer, and some other static components. And then there is the dynamic part which will be fetched from the server API calls. So the whole page will not be refreshed now. Only that particular dynamic part will be refreshed when you do some actions like navigating through tabs or any other action. Okay. Now, for example, when you're seeing your Gmail, right? You scroll down the emails, only that particular part of the page is refreshed. You'll see not the complete Gmail page refreshing, right? So much better UI experience and much better performance, right? So what these frameworks do, they will create one single document which will be loaded in the browser, and only the content which requires updating will be fetched from the server API calls. Rest all the static content will be inside that one document. Okay, so this is how a single page application is developed. Another basic concept that I found the candidates were not able to answer is the difference between a controlled and uncontrolled component. It is very simple to understand. In a controlled component, form data is handled by a React component. In uncontrolled component, form data is handled by the DOM itself. What does that mean? Let's understand. So this is an example of controlled component. The value, if you see, the value is being populated by a property called value, which is basically the state of the component. Okay, so this is being controlled, the value of the component is being controlled by the state of the component, and that state is also being controlled by this on change method. So this on change method will update the state of the component. It will update the value of this component. So this is being controlled by a React state. Okay, whereas in uncontrolled component there's no value attribute. Okay, there's only one ref. Okay, so this ref is the handle for the DOM itself. Okay, now how do you access this, the value of this uncontrolled component? You can access the value of the uncontrolled component by using the ref. So in this case, you can use input ref dot current dot value and get the value of the uncontrolled component. But in no way this is being controlled by the state of the component. It is no way being controlled by the React itself. Okay, so this is the major difference between a control and an uncontrolled component. Let's move to a more advanced topic now, higher order component. It's also a very hot topic in React.js interviews. Okay, so let's understand what is a higher order component. A higher order component is a function that takes a component and returns a new component. It is an advanced technique in React for using component logic. It is not a part of React API. It is just a pattern that emerges from React's preference to composition over inheritance. Three important points here. First, higher order component is a function that will take a component as an argument, okay, and it will return a new component. Okay, why is higher order component used? It is used for reusing component logic. Okay, that's the second important point. The third important point is that it is not a part of React API. It is a design pattern that emerges from React's preference to composition over inheritance. So we'll talk about these 3 points later in the slide, but let's understand what is a higher order function first. Okay, so higher order function is a function that receives a function as an argument or returns the function. Okay, so it will receive a function or not and or return the function as an output is called a higher order function. Okay, so examples of higher order functions: map, filter, reduce. All these methods of array are higher order functions. You must have seen in map we give a function, right, as an argument, a callback function. That is why a map is also a higher order function. So we spoke about React's preference of composition over inheritance, but let's first understand what is composition and what is inheritance. Okay, so the main difference between inheritance and composition is in the relationship between the objects. Inheritance is a relationship. Composition is has a relationship. For example, the car is a vehicle. The car has a steering wheel. Okay, so is inheritance, has a is composition. So inheritance is little tighter form of coupling in object oriented programming, which means that if you change the parent class, right, your child class may get impacted because of the changes in the parent class. So there is a tight coupling between the parent and the child class. But composition is a far looser coupling. Okay, combining with dependency injection, it brings more flexibility and allows us to change runtime behavior. Let's see an example now. So let's take an example of these two components, dialog and welcome dialogues. On the first look, it looks like that the relationship between dialog and welcome dialog is a relationship. So welcome dialog looks like a child of dialog, right? But React favors composition over inheritance. So what React will do to establish this relationship is that it will pass props from the specific component, which is the welcome dialog, to the most generic component dialog. Okay, so the relationship between welcome dialog and dialog can be achieved through passing the props. Okay, so in this case, we have passed title and message as props to the dialog, and these props like title and message can be displayed in the dialog component. So this is an example of composition and how React does composition over inheritance. Okay, so there were three important points about higher order components, right? So the third point we have already discussed in the previous slide. Let's discuss the first 2 points now. The first point was higher order component is a function that will receive a component as an argument and will return back a component. Okay, and the second point was that higher order component is used for reusability of component logic. So let's understand this with these two examples. Okay, so here is a function with error which receives a component as an argument and returns back a component. So this is an higher order component. Why we have used it now? Suppose I have multiple components, okay, and I want to display a common error message in all these components. So I don't want to write this common error message in each and every component, right? That will be repetitive code. In order to avoid that, I'm using a higher order component. I'm writing that common logic in my higher order component and passing it as a prop to component. Okay, so this with error is a perfect example of a higher order component. Another example is with loading. Similarly, I am passing a component as an argument and returning back a component. In this case, I have a common loading message for all the components. Okay, so these two are perfect examples of higher order components. There are other examples as well, like with themes, with styles. You must have seen in your projects, right? So yeah, these are examples of higher order components. A very important concept and a very hot topic in interview questions. Okay, so guys, in this video we covered few basic level questions like what is single page application, what is the difference between controlled and uncontrolled components, what are HOCs and why they are used. In next video, we will cover few advanced concepts like React design patterns, performance optimization, memorizations, and questions related to those concepts. Okay, we'll also discuss few common JDs and we will discuss how to derive questions from those common JDs. Till then, keep watching our channel, and if you like the video, please do subscribe and support our channel. Thank you.